There's a few things I want you to keep in mind when you're pan frying your burger. Pan frying might seem like a very easy, very simple technique for you to learn to do with hamburgers, and it can be, but it can be very tricky too. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to pan fry hamburgers when I was first learning, and I smoked up the entire house. You know, everybody's eyes were watering from the smoke in there. So there's and I've burnt my burgers. I've had them where they look to cook on the outside, and then when we bite into them, they're raw on the inside. There's a few techniques for you to get through with your burgers. The first one is, when you're making your burgers, don't overwork the hamburger. When you're putting in your ingredients, your salt, your pepper, your onions, anything else that you add to your burger, try not to overwork it. You don't want to get in there with your fingers and squish that meat through your fingers. You don't want to be bruising it, and you don't want to be making the meat tough. So if you overwork your meat, you're going to make your burger tough and perhaps a little bit dry. So be very gentle with the meat. You don't need to overmix it. When you're making your first hamburgers, try to make them about 3/4 of an inch. You don't want to make them very much larger than that, or you're going to have a tough time judging how long to leave the burger on. Just work with 3/4 of an inch for now. You don't want to go too thin either. You don't want to see through a tough piece of meat. Try about 3/4 of an inch on your burger, and make sure they're flat. If they're a little bit round, then you can have a tendency, they'll kind of puff up and shrink, and they'll look like a little baseball when you're finished, and that's not what you want to work with. So make sure they're flat, or what you can do is you can put a little thumbprint on the inside of your hamburger, or put a little indent in there, and that'll help prevent them from puffing up and looking a little bit like a baseball. They're going to shrink up anyway, so when you make your burger, make it slightly larger than your hamburger bun. That way when it shrinks up, it'll be nice in there. There's nothing worse than making a hamburger, and then by the time it shrinks up, it barely fits 1/4 of your bun in the end. So make sure you're watching the size of the bun, and make your burger a little bit wider than that. When you're frying your burger, make sure your pan is hot when you put your burger on. You do want to hear that pan sizzle. It's going to give it that nice browning on there. So you don't want to put your burger on a cold pan. Make sure it's nice and hot so you can hear that sizzle. Now the flip side to that is making sure that your pan isn't too hot. If you start getting steam and there's smoke happening in your house, that kind of thing, your pan is way too hot. Or if you've started the outside of the burger gets black but the inside is still raw, you've got your temperature way too high. That's just going to take a little bit of practice for you getting used to the heat of your pan, your oven as to how hot or how cool it gets. And that's going to change. You might be able to pan fry a burger great at your house with your oven, your pan, everything. But then when you go to somebody else's house, their pan holds heat a little bit more, and so you need to turn the heat of your stove down. Things like that. So you'll have to watch for that, but you will have to make sure that your pan isn't too hot that it's burning the outside of your hamburger and leaving the inside raw. Another thing people have a tendency to do is they want to squish the burger with the spatula. I don't know why that is. It does make a nice sizzle when you squish down on the top of the hamburger, and you can hear the fat squishing out, and it makes a lovely sizzle. But what's going to happen is you're pushing out the juices of your hamburger, and then when you push out the juices of your hamburger, you're going to end up with a dry burger. So avoid that temptation as well. When you're cooking your hamburger, color is not a good indicator of whether it's done or not. The best indicator is the internal temperature of your hamburger. So you're going to have to use a thermometer and test the inside temperature of your hamburger. It should get to 71 degrees Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit, whichever conversion you're using. That's how you'll know when it's done. Your juices should also run clear. You don't want to be taking out your hamburger, and if you notice that the juices are running out and they're pink, your hamburger's probably not done. So you want clear juices to be running out of your hamburger, but the internal temperature needs to be 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius. Other than that, it's going to be a lot of experience and going through. Don't worry if you burn your first couple burgers or if your first couple burgers are raw. You'll get the hang of it. Lastly, I want to say before you serve your burger, and this goes for if you're cooking steak as well, you always want to let your burger rest before serving it. So take your hamburger, put it on a plate, cover it with tin foil, and let it rest for 5 minutes. That's going to let the juices settle so that when you bite into your burger or cut into your burger, all the juices don't run out They'll stay nice in your burger if you just let it rest for 5 minutes. That'll be the key there to finishing off and having your nice juicy burger in the end. Okay, so good luck with pan frying your burgers. Be easy on yourself. It seems like a very easy task, and once you get the hang of it, it is. But along the way, you're going to be making a few burgers, and by the time you get to the last one, you should have perfected your technique. But, good luck, and have fun with your burgers. I just want to briefly talk to you about two different types of pans, or the different types of pans you can use to pan fry when you're doing something. The first one is just a basic non-stick pan, which will work fine. But I'll tell you, the better pan, if you've got one that has a thicker bottom on it, that's going to ensure a more even heat, and it's going to ensure that your burgers don't burn near as quickly as if you had one that was quite a thin pan. When I first moved out from college, I had a very thin frying pan, and I burnt so much of everything. So if you do have a frying pan at home that doesn't have a nice thick bottom on it, make sure that your heat on your stove is turned down quite a bit more, because the thinner your pan, the hotter it will get, perhaps the more uneven it will get, and you do have the tendency to burn when you pan fry with a thinner pan. So if you've got a thicker frying pan, a thicker bottom frying pan, then great, use that. This one's non-stick, so typically on this one you will have to use either a non-stick spray or some olive oil. I like to use olive oil when I'm doing most of my pan frying with my non-stick pan, and that gives it a nice flavor and it prevents it from sticking. The other pan that I want to show you is a non-stick pan, and maybe you have a non-stick pan at home, and that's great too. This one's a non-stick pan, again with a nice thick bottom on it, so it's going to have a nice even heat. This pan is non-stick, so with a non-stick you absolutely don't want to be using a non-stick spray. If you use a non-stick spray on a pan that is already a non-stick, it will tend to grab onto the sides of the pan, and you can create a bit of a film on your pan. So if you have a non-stick pan, you can use nothing if you're pan frying, that's the whole point. Or you can put a little bit of olive oil in there, a little bit of oil when you do pan fry your burgers, and that will still just add a little bit of extra flavor. But don't, on a non-stick pan, don't use a non-stick spray, because it will create a bit of a film over top of it. But a nice thick bottom is best. If you don't have a thick bottom on your frying pan, then do make sure you're watching your heat, that it's quite a bit lower than you could use if you had a thicker pan.